Who can play mridanga? This is the one.
Which one? Oh, these.
I think it's okay now.
Someone broke it.
Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namah Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Oh, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Bolo. Oh, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bolo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Radha Madan Mohan ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveta Bhaktavinda ki jai, Tai Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol.
Welcome to ISKCON of Silicon Valley. I'm very happy today because here at ISKCON of Silicon Valley we try to bring everyone through the internet and here the live studio audience at the temple the best of programming that's available in the world today. And I can say from my heart that I feel like we've hit the pinnacle in this weekend, and it happens fortunately for us once a year. And that is that we've somehow or other attracted Radhika Raman Prabhu to come here. He's continuing his seminar today on the allurement of Mayavadi philosophy and how to defeat it. What is the second part called?
Yeah, and how to refute it or
How to refute it.
resist it.
And resist it. And so the battle rages on today. And very happily, let's welcome back His Grace Radhika Raman Prabhu.
Thank you. So, Thank you so much for that kind and joyous welcome. Sadly, we don't have too much time today, and so I'm really eager to get through the material that we have planned, because I think what comes today is very important to complete what happened yesterday. So, first of all, again, let me express my appreciation for the devotees here. This is a seminar that I would think of giving at very few places other than ISKCON Silicon Valley, for the simple reason that it requires a lot of detailed philosophical work that requires an audience that is very used to studying Srila Prabhupada's books and applying themselves both intellectually and practically in devotional service. And ISV presents that wonderful balance of a very strong dedication to study as well as to practice. And so the other very practical reason I would think about giving this seminar in very few places other than ISKCON Silicon Valley is because you hold your seminars here in the mornings. And most places do their seminars in the afternoons and evenings, and this is simply not a topic for the evening. It requires a lot of mental concentration, and even in the mornings we can barely get through it given the nature of the topic. In case anyone was left either a little confused yesterday with the theory of impersonalism and its refutation, or they want more details about it, I think I've mentioned this already, but in case I forgot, there's two things I want to refer you to. One is, if you look at Tattva Sandarbha, which has been published by Gopi Pranandhana Prabhu, his translation and commentary, published by Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, you can find in the second half of it is called the Prameya Khanda, and it's describing what it is that we are supposed to study in the Shat Sandarbha, in Jiva Goswami's works and in Mahaprabhu's philosophy. And not at all surprisingly, and very relevant for our seminar here, Jiva Goswami spends a very significant amount of time in the Tattva Sandarbha talking about the theories of impersonalism that we have discussed in this seminar and refuting them. Given the nature of Tattva Sandarbha as an introductory book to the Shat Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami addresses them very briefly. So if you look at Anucheda 35, for example, and around there, he mentions the theories of illusion, the rope and the snake, the jar within the ocean, those theories that we talked about yesterday. He mentions them just briefly. Gopi Pranandhana Prabhu in his commentary elaborates them more fully, and then he offers some refutations of them. He will do this in more detail later on in the Sandarbhas. So as these Sandarbhas emerge, Bhagavat Sandarbha, Paramatma Sandarbha, you'll have an opportunity to see them unpacked in greater detail. So that's one location that I wanted to bring to your attention, that Jiva Goswami is concerned with this. And then the second, I'm sure I mentioned yesterday, but it's worth highlighting, chapter 7 of Adi Leela, Srila Prabhupada's purports there, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's conversation with Prakashananda Saraswati, and the purports that Srila Prabhupada writes there are incredible. They are very detailed. They take a lot of work to get through all the steps and ideas that he presents there. But once again, if you listen to this seminar and then go back to those purports, if you've read them already, I encourage you to go back. You will find a lot of these ideas and concepts that are present there. So all of these ideas and concepts are not new to us. We've seen them before in Prabhupada's books and the works of the Goswamis. The idea of the seminar is to kind of bring them all together, make them systematic, and then create a kind of dialogue between Mayavad philosophy and Vaishnavism, with a view of really showing how the Vaishnava philosophy refutes and in many ways completes the ideas of impersonalism. So that's just a little bit from last time, and yesterday we covered the importance of identifying impersonalism in the world and particularly in our own lives. And we talked about some of the ways in which impersonalism permeates our culture and our society, even when it is not couched in philosophical terms. So that we're not talking about necessarily some opponent who's out there, but an opponent who may be in our own house in the forms of screens and technologies and so many other ways. And then we talked about the exemplar of impersonal philosophy, that of Shripad Shankaracharya, who provided the most well-defined and his followers and most detailed version of impersonalist philosophy. We tried to present it on its own terms so that we could see the power and the impact of the philosophy that our acharyas, and especially Srila Prabhupada, spend so much time arguing against, okay? It's really important that we understand just how powerful it is. And afterwards, yesterday, a couple of devotees came to me and told me about how pained they were to hear it and how fearful they were to hear it as well because of its power. And that's a good reaction. That combination of some fear and some pain when we hear it, that's kind of where we want to be when we hear such a well-developed philosophy like Shankaracharya's. Fear because we should genuinely be afraid of it. It's not something, as I mentioned yesterday, not something to just laugh off. If it were, then our acharyas would not have spent so much time and energy discussing it and then refuting it. And it's something to be pained by. If we're not pained by the ideas that we expressed yesterday, then it means that our heart is not in the right place, because it really does affect our ability to serve Krishna if we cannot think of him as a person. So that was yesterday. We talked about Shankaracharya's philosophy and then did a refutation of the rope and snake metaphor and the jar metaphor. And the last thing that's left today is to talk about Tat Tvam Asi, that famous statement, you are that. And I want to present to you a Vaishnava understanding of Tat Tvam Asi coming from Srila Ramanujacharya and Srila Jiva Goswami. Okay, so we're going to do that. That's going to be the technical part of today. And then once that's complete, let's see how quickly we can get through that, hopefully in 45 minutes or so. And then once that's complete, then I want to raise the question, two more practical questions. How do we address Mayavad when we find it in others, when we meet someone in the course of our day-to-day activities? And how do we address it when we meet Mayavad in ourselves? Okay, so both directions, how do we do it? And then the peace treaty, bringing everything together, wrapping it up and saying, okay, how do these two conceptions actually live together in the philosophy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? If we have time at the end, then I promised a treat of some really nice verses that are relevant to this seminar, and hopefully we'll get to those as well. Okay, so we have a lot to go through, and we will get started. Okay, so Tat Tvam Asi. Last time we ended with the idea that Shripad Ramanujacharya says that instead of trying to remove all the attributes, all the personality, all the form, everything of any quality from the Lord to protect him, his oneness. How about if we do the opposite? What if we give it all to the Lord? Every quality, every form, every nature, and every type of attribute. That he becomes the supremely qualified, Samasta Kalyana Gunasagara, he says, the ocean of all wonderful qualities. This is the Vashishta, the Lord who is supremely qualified. He is still one, however. He is Advaita. This is something that every Acharya, including Srila Jiva Goswami, is very keen on maintaining. You know the famous verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yajnanam advayam. The word advayam means Advaita. The Lord is one. That's a fundamental tenet of Vedanta that hopefully we showed you yesterday from the Chandogya Upanishad. God is one, ultimate reality is one, there is nothing outside of him. That's something that every Acharya in the Vedanta tradition accepts, including Advaitins and Vishishtadvaitins and Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Okay? So, Tattvam asi. This statement is just as important for us as it is for anyone else because it makes this simple point. Everything is Krishna. Everything is God. Everything is the Lord. Tattvam asi. And you too participate in that reality in some way. The question is how? You are that. How are you that? Okay? So, Ramanujacharya says, in order to understand his view, let me introduce you to one metaphor that he uses. And the metaphor is of self or soul and body. The Lord, he says, the exact Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan ki jai. The example that he gives is that we are, that just as we exist in relation to a body, in the same way the Lord is the soul, he's the self, the Atma of the universe. And the living entities, as well as the inanimate world around us, is his body. Okay? So his relationship to the universe is his body. Now this concept should not surprise us if we've read chapter 11 of Bhagavad Gita, and someone mentioned it yesterday in the course of questions. They asked me to explain this, and I said we would come to that. Ramanujacharya basically builds his theory around this, that the world, the universe, is the body of the Lord. What does that mean? He says that the self-body relationship is characterized by several features. Okay? One is that the self, the Atma, completely controls the body. So I want to move my hand up, and my hand moves up. Okay? So the self-body relationship is a controller-controlled relationship. That's the first thing. The second thing he says is that they are inseparable. At least so long as we are alive. Okay, this metaphor, like any metaphor, has its limits. But so long as we are alive, there's no question of the soul and the body. It's not that our soul walks away and our body walks away in this direction and they spend some time apart. The two are inseparable. Okay, they're one whole unit. Now that's very important. And then the third is that the body is real. Okay? The soul is obviously real also, but the body is too. And his point here is that both body and soul, let me put that down too. Body and self are both real. So there's nothing false. Not like Shankaracharya says, neither real nor unreal or mithya. No. The world is real. The Lord is real. Our relationship is real. Madhvacharya says this very beautifully. He says, Mayavad philosophy he compares to highway robbery. Why? Because he says it robs the world of its beauty and its value. It robs the Lord of his qualities and attributes. It robs the soul of our greatest opportunity and wealth, which is our relationship with the Lord. And it robs the scriptures of their primary meaning. We saw that yesterday. Yes? So 4 types of highway robbery this Mayavad philosophy is. It's robbing the scriptures of their meaning, the Lord of his wonderful qualities, us of our opportunity for our relationship, and the world of its value and its goodness. Just this morning I was chanting japa and looking out my window, and there was this hummingbird bzzz, coming around and picking honey, nectar from these flowers. And such a beautiful scene, so beautiful. The hummingbird was beautiful, the flowers were beautiful, the whole process was just, it was so nice. It was almost as if I was in California. It was just wonderful. And to think that that scene, my appreciation for that scene was worthless, that it had no value, that whole thing was just an illusion. That's robbery, right? It's robbery. So he says body and self are both real. These are the characteristics of a body-soul relationship. The Lord and this world are inseparable. The Lord controls this world like we control our bodies, but He's also responsive to it, right? When something in our body pains us, we know it and we respond to alleviate that pain. When something in this world is amiss, then Krishna says, Dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. I come back to establish dharma again. And this world is real, the Lord is real. Okay? Now, let's back to Tattvam Asi. You are that. 3 words there. You are that. We could talk about what you means. And we have kind of, the soul. And we could talk about what that means. And we've talked about that. That's Brahman. That's Krishna with all qualities. But the real struggle in this statement is actually neither you nor that. We actually share a lot in commonality with other Vedantists on the question of who we are. We're the eternal spirit soul, Satchidananda Karna. And the Lord is that, right? And that's the supreme Satchidananda. Whether He has a form or not, we debate. But these are almost common elements. The real struggle, believe it or not, is with this word right here. And this is just another form of the verb is in English, right? Is. What is? That's the question. What does is mean? What does it mean to say this is that? Now, the Mayavadis would have you believe that this is simple, straightforward, it's a no-brainer. This is that is like saying water is H2O. 2 things are identical. But no. There are many ways of understanding is. In fact, this is that is actually a very minor way of thinking of it. That's called identity or referential identity, where one thing refers to the other thing. It's the same thing. But let me give you an example. Let's say we've got a man named Fred. What does it mean? Here's all the ways in which we can say that is Fred. If we wanted to say that is Fred, okay? Suppose he wakes up in the morning, he looks in the mirror, and he points and he says, oh, that is Fred. Now, what's Fred? There. The mirror? No. The reflection? Is he saying that I am the reflection? No. He's saying that there's certain characteristics of the reflection that match him, right? Not an absolute identity here. He's not saying he's absolutely a mirror or he's absolutely a reflection. How about if he says, if I look at him in a room and I say, oh, that's Fred. What am I doing there? I'm pointing him out as a member of a group of people. What if someone tells me about him and some funny thing that Fred's done, and I say, that's Fred. What am I stating there? That there's certain characteristics about Fred that are typical of Fred, right? He always does that kind of thing. That's Fred. There are many ways to take this statement. If I say Fred is an American, I'm identifying Fred as a member of a set. I'm not saying all Americans are Fred or all Freds are American. I'm not saying that all of America is Fred. I'm saying Fred is a member of a set called Americans. One more. What if I say Fred is a painter? How am I using is there? Fred is a painter. Adjectively, right? As an adjective. Fred, he's not the only painter. He's not painting. He's got a certain quality that I'm attributing to him called painter. That's the sense in which Ramanujacharya says we have to take this Tattvam Asi. Tattvam Asi is saying you are that, namely The living entity is Brahman. The world is Brahman. Adjectively, we are an attribute of the Lord. We are a quality of the Lord. We are the body of the Lord. And just as it is appropriate to include the body when you are talking about the soul, it's appropriate to point to the world and say, this is Krishna. Let me give you an example. If I say, this is Srivas, right? What am I pointing to here? Actually, not even his body. I'm pointing to his shirt, right? Now, am I lying when I say this is Srivas? No. Insofar as the shirt is connected to his body, it's appropriate to take the entire package, shirt, dhoti, hair, tilak, everything, and say, this is Srivas, right? It's correct. Now, if he were to take that shirt off and put on a different shirt, could I point to that shirt and say, that's Srivas? No, it would be wrong. So long as when we think of the world in relationship with the Lord, which it always is, unlike the shirt, the Lord is inseparable. Remember that? The body is inseparable from the soul. The Lord is inseparable from this world. Why? Because it's his energy. It's his Shakti. It's part of who he is. Because it's connected to the Lord, therefore we can look at the world and we can say, this is Krishna. There's this purport in Bhagavad Gita where Srila Prabhupada talks about this beautifully, how everything is Krishna. He even says, we are Krishna. In what sense? That we are connected to him. We are his energy. We are his Shakti. We are his body. In fact, Srila Jiva Goswami and Gaudiya Vaishnavas do exactly the same thing as Ramanujacharya does, except they do it with the language of Shakti and Shaktiman, the energy and the possessor of energy. Instead of talking about the example of body and soul, they talk about the example of the sun and its rays. Yes? So long as we're talking about the rays and the world as a product of the sun, as the energy of the sun, it is appropriate to point to it and say, this is the sun, because it's the sun's energy. I'll give you one more example. In case the kurta one. One more example besides the Srivas Prabhu one. So suppose you have a tangerine, okay? In fact, we don't have to suppose it. I've got some tangerines here. Okay, so we're going to do a little experiment. Okay, so don't do anything to it until I tell you to. Actually, will someone else do this too, please? These are all offered, but don't eat them yet. I don't dare throw it all the way back there. I don't want to. Okay, here. All right. Ready? Okay. Oh, I didn't give any of the kids here. Give some to the kids here in the front. Okay. So now put the tangerine in front of you, and now just do this simple experiment. Where's the tangerine? Point to the tangerine. Okay. Say, this is the tangerine. Okay. Now peel it. These are easy to peel. It should only take 30 seconds. Okay, and try to get the peel, put it all together in a pile, separate from the tangerine. Now, point to the tangerine. So every single one of you is pointing to what? The fruit inside, right? The pulp. A minute ago you were pointing to what? You were pointing to the skin, right? And now, if I asked you, what's that pile sitting next to your fruit? What would you say it is? The skin, the peel. And a minute ago you were calling it the tangerine. Were you lying then? No. So long as the peel was connected to the tangerine, the entire thing can rightly be called the tangerine. But as soon as you separated the two, then what's really the tangerine? The pulp inside, not the peel. We are Krishna. This world is Krishna. Yes, that's true. We're like the peel. We're the body of the Lord, His universal form. He includes us. We're His energy, just like the peel is for the pulp. And we can rightly point to this world and say, Tat Tvam Asi, you are that Brahman. And that's correct. So long as we are an adjective to the Lord. That's our position. We're an adjective to the Lord. And if we want to separate ourselves and talk about the material energy as something that is distinct, this world as separate from God, or we want to run like God, then no, we're just the peel. We're just a peel. And actually, that is Krishna, right? He is Krishna, not us. That's what it means to be the Lord's energy, or to be the Lord's body, or really to be an adjective to the Lord. I love that phrasing that Ramanujacharya gives us. We are an adjective to the Lord. Think about that. What does an adjective do to a noun? It adds to its glory, right? It embellishes. Just like you can say, you can say flower. But then if you say fragrant flower, you've brought out something that's already there. It's not that by saying fragrant, you've added something to the flower. The flower is already fragrant. Or by saying it's a pink flower, it's not that you added anything to the flower. You're just eliciting, you're drawing out something and highlighting it. You're framing it. So we are in relationship to Krishna. When we serve Krishna well, when we relate to Him as we should, it's not that we're adding anything to Krishna. Krishna already includes us. He already claims us as Himself, as part of Him. He can have whatever He wants from us. But when we do our job, we elicit out something wonderful about the Lord. We can display Krishna's goodness, His qualities, His beauty. People can look at the devotee and say, wow, Krishna must be so wonderful because His devotees are so wonderful. That's what it means to be an adjective to the Lord. He's the noun, we're the adjective. That's how Ramanujacharya takes this phrase, you are that, in a beautiful way. And here's the wonderful thing. If you think of the world as the Lord's body, as an adjective, as the Lord's energy, this means that something can happen to the body that doesn't necessarily have to affect the soul, isn't it? So this world can be a place of misery. It can occasionally be suffering. It can be problematic. And does the Lord have to suffer? No. Right? We had that problem with Mayavadi, where now Maya is inside Brahman and Brahman's in Maya. We don't have to do that. Why? Because here we've got the Lord's body. And just like something can happen to our body, like for example, it can age, but we still feel the same inside. So Krishna is the same. But the world has its ups and downs, it changes and it flows in different directions. That's okay. Krishna is affected, but only insofar as he wants to be affected. He pays attention to the world as much as he wants. But in his core, he doesn't have to be pained or suffer or experience birth, disease, old age, and death. So it creates some distance between Maya and the Lord while holding it together. In the Sandarbhas, in Tattva Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami gives an example using the example of the sun and its rays. He says, the living entity is like this. Imagine you're in a dark room and someone punches a tiny hole in the wall. And from that hole comes one ray of sunlight. That is like the jiva, the living entity. Now, when that sunlight comes through, can you point to it and say, that's the sun? Yes. For someone who's born and raised in that dark room, and this is the only access they have, you can tell them rightly, see, that's the sun. That's what the sun looks like. And your answer is right. But of course it's right partially. It's right because that sun rays is coming from something much greater, which is the source of it. In the same way, Srila Jiva Goswami says, the Upanishads, they teach us, Tat Tvam Asi, you are that, as a way of teaching for those who have no reference point other than themselves. What do we know in this world? What do we have immediate access to? Ourselves, right? We may not know who God is, we may not know what the world is like, but we know ourselves. So let's start there. The Upanishads say, let's start there. You've got that little ray of sunlight, examine it, that's what the sun is. You are that. Now you've got a little sample. But that's not the end of the story. That's just the beginning of the story. That's just our first introduction to the sun, that little ray that comes through the crack in the window. Now, one thing the Upanishads, they say, that annam brahma, that Brahman is anna, or food, okay? And in our example here, the tangerine is Brahman, right? And the world was the peel. So now, since Brahman is food, you're welcome to relish this Brahman and eat it in case you already haven't, okay? And you will fully understand the meaning of what the Upanishads say. They say very clearly, God is food, annam brahma. So if you like, you can eat it. Otherwise, just hold on to it. There's a bag being passed around for the peel as well. So you don't make a mess here in the temple. Okay, so this is you are that. This explanation is wonderful. It's beautiful. It's simple. You remember how Oliver translated that section that we read yesterday? He translated Tattvam Asi as? That's how you are. And this is what Ramanujacharya is saying. That's how you are. That's not what you are. That's how you are. That's the quality that you share in relation to the Lord. Okay? So, this allows us to deny things about the world that we don't have to deny regarding God as well. If I say, Fred is a painter, and then I say, Fred the painter is not good. What am I saying? What's not good? His ability to paint, right? Fred might otherwise be a fine human being. He may be a great father, he may be a great husband, but Fred the painter is not good. So we can say negative things about this world. This world is dukhalayam, it's a place of misery. But we're not saying that the Lord is a place of misery. As opposed to what we saw with Mayavad, where Brahman is in Maya. Why? Because who else is there to be in Maya? There's no separation between Brahman and the world. That causes a huge problem. Okay. So now, we've seen the refutation of the rope and the snake. We've seen the refutation of the jug and water. One thing I forgot to mention yesterday is I simplified the metaphor. The original metaphor, in case someone asks you, the original metaphor is the jar in the sky, ghatakasha. The sky within the jar and the sky outside the jar. But that's terribly complicated to understand. The sky in the it's easier for us to understand with something a little more tangible, yes, than sky. So water tends to work a little better, I found. But it's the same idea. So in case anyone says, no, that's not the metaphor, you know the real metaphor is the sky in the pot, the sky outside the pot. More or less the same thing. Okay, so we've seen the refutation of the sky in the pot, we've seen the rope and the snake, and we've seen Tattvam Asi. Those were the three main arguments that we presented in favor of Mayavada, and then we've worked our way through each one of those three and tried to show how the Vaishnava interpretation doesn't have all those problems associated with the Mayavad view. Now, I want to talk about the third section of the seminar, which is the peace treaty. We've seen the opponent, we've done the battle. Hopefully we've come out not too badly bruised from the fight, but now we need to make peace, okay? And this is something really special about the Gaudiya Vaishnav Sampradaya in particular, about our tradition. Our tradition is very firm on Siddhanta, and yet very broad-minded in where we are willing to find the truth. So think about that for a minute. We're very clear on what is the truth and very open about where we might find it. This is a wonderful combination, and you don't always find this together. Often people who are very clear on what the truth is are also very specific and limited on where you can find it. This is the truth, and it only comes from this book, period. That's a form of fanaticism. And other people are very open on where you can find truth and very unclear on what that truth is. Right? You can kind of, everything is true, right? All paths lead to the same place, and all roads lead up the mountain, and so on and so forth. So you get this or that. Our acharyas present this beautiful middle ground where they say, this is the truth, this is Siddhanta. We're very clear and we're happy to argue it with anyone. But we're very open on where we can find it, even kernels of it. And we see this in the works of our acharyas. Srila Jiva Goswami, as he writes in the Sandarbhas, he draws from many different places. Definitely Ramanujacharya, who we've been quoting, and Madhvacharya, but even Shankaracharya. He's happy to take ideas and concepts from them. Ramanujacharya would never give the Advaitins the idea that there is an unattributed impersonal reality. Ramanujacharya says, nope. The Lord is always with qualities. There is no qualityless ultimate aspect of the Lord, period. He's never separate from his body. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, no, you can have it. You want an impersonal, unattributed, nirvishesha reality? Yes, God is that too. He's completely impersonal. But he's also personal and full of qualities, exactly as Ramanujacharya described it. Why not have both together? We've already established that the Lord is inconceivable. In fact, Srila Jiva Goswami, he says, in the Sarva Samvadani, he talks about how, he says, the idea of the world being non-different from the Lord has been argued so well by the Advaitins and has been shown to have so many problems by the Vaishnavas. The view that God is completely different from the world, Bheda, is a view that has been argued so well and shown to have so many problems by the opposition. So what should we do? Take them both. Take them both. Then you have the best of both and you can get rid of the problems of each because each one makes up for the difference in the other. And therefore he says, Mahaprabhu's view is Bheda, Abheda, difference and non-difference. Let's take the impersonal reality and join him to the personal Lord, and let's make them make the impersonal an aspect of the personal. And now Jiva Goswami says, we've got three aspects: Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. We'll take Brahman from the impersonalists, Paramatma from the yogis, and Bhagavan from the bhaktas, and put them all together. And sure, that's a contradiction. But the Lord is achintya, He's inconceivable. And yesterday we already talked about that the Vaishnavas are happy to talk about inconceivability just as much as the Advaitins, except we put it in a different place. We put our inconceivability in the form and nature of God, of Brahman, whereas they put it in the location of the world. The Lord is meant to be inconceivable. How can He be both personal and impersonal at the same time? Is that not a contradiction? And the answer is yes, it is. It's a paradox. And the Lord is the realm of paradox. Sarva viruddha dharma ashraya, the abode of all opposing qualities. So, Jiva Goswami at one point in the Sandarbha says, I've got a Paramatma Sandarbha and a Bhagavat Sandarbha, right, which is Bhagavan Sandarbha. Why not a Brahma Sandarbha? There's Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, three aspects. Why not a Brahma Sandarbha? You know his answer? He says, the Advaitins have already talked about Brahman really well. You want to know about Brahman? Go see what they have to say about it. I don't need to rework it again. It's already been well done. I'm going to add what they don't have, which is Bhagavan, to it. In this way, Mahaprabhu brings together everyone. Of course, there's a hierarchy. It's not all equal. Bhagavan is the highest manifestation of Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. Bhagavan is the supreme. The energy, the effulgence comes from the energetic, from the effulgent, from the brilliant Lord. But still, there's room for that impersonal conception. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada, he says in this purport to Bhagavad Gita chapter 7, text 8, a wonderful and famous purport, he says, this is the verse where Krishna says, Rasoham apsu konteya prabhasmi shashi suryayo. I am the taste of water, and I am the light of the sun and the moon. And Prabhupada writes, the impersonalist perceives the presence of the Lord in water by its taste. And the personalist also glorifies the Lord for His kindly supplying tasty water to quench man's thirst. So one appreciates the taste, the other appreciates the source, the provider of that taste. That is the way of perceiving the Supreme. Practically speaking, there is no conflict between personalism and impersonalism. One who knows God knows that the impersonal conception and personal conception are simultaneously present in everything, and that there is no contradiction. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya established His sublime doctrine, Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, simultaneous oneness and difference. There you have it. In one paragraph, Prabhupada encapsulates the peace treaty. He says, this is what we have to offer. The only thing we cannot accommodate is the Advaitin concept of Maya. This is why we specifically talk about Mayavad and not Advaita. Prabhupada rarely uses the word Advaitins except when he's actually talking about the Advaitins, like Shankaracharya. Most of the time, the Acharyas are arguing against Mayavad because it is specifically the doctrine of Maya that we have something against. What is the doctrine of Maya? That the Lord's form is Maya, that our individuality is Maya, that the world is Maya. That's what we can't stand. And when that appears, the Vaishnavas speak against it. They argue against it. But the other aspects of it, we're happy to borrow truth where it is found. In fact, not just this idea of the impersonal Brahman, but Jiva Goswami accepts many different things. The idea of Jivan Mukti, that we can become liberated even in this life, right? When we become fully absorbed in our relationship with Krishna, then Rupa Goswami says, Jivan Mukta sa uchyate. That person is Jivan Mukta. The other Vaishnavacharyas don't accept the idea of Jivan Mukti. Only Videha Mukti. They say you can only be liberated after death. This Jivan Mukti is an idea propounded by Shankaracharya. And we say, why not? You can become liberated in this life, but our concept of liberation is different. It's not rejecting the Lord, it's by establishing our connection with the Lord. The idea of Swarupa and Tatastha Lakshana. This is a little technical, but the Lord's primary characteristics and his secondary characteristics. In the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, the Lord's spiritual energy is his primary characteristic. The Lord's creation of the world is secondary because it doesn't do with his inner nature. Jiva Goswami describes this. This categorization of Swarupa and Tatastha Lakshana is accepted, is propounded by the Advaitins, and Jiva Goswami is happy to take it because it works. There are many such ideas. His interpretation of certain sutras of the Vedanta Sutra, like Shastra Yonitvat. I don't have time to go into the details, but this sutra, Ramanujacharya interprets in one way, Madhvacharya interprets in one way, and both in similar ways. Shankaracharya interprets also in a similar way, and then gives a totally different interpretation. And that interpretation is fine. It works. And Jiva Goswami accepts it. None of the other Vaishnavacharyas would. But Jiva Goswami says, if it's not opposed to the Siddhanta of pure bhakti, it works. It's okay, we'll take it. Now this takes a lot of skill. Okay, this is something our acharyas do, to know what can be taken because it's not opposed to Siddhanta, and what will provide us a slippery slope into an opposition to Siddhanta. This is a very delicate matter, very delicate matter. How to pick and choose and where to draw truth from. How to take truth from a rubbish bin and not get your hands dirty. This is a great skill, right? And only people with that kind of wisdom and knowledge can do it. But the attitude is there. The attitude we can appreciate as part of the peace treaty. We can say, no, it's there. In fact, so many people become devotees after a journey through impersonalism, isn't it? If it isn't yourself, perhaps you've met people. I personally know many wonderful devotees who started off in many impersonalist worlds or were attracted to such ideas and writings, and that was part of their journey to Krishna. So this leads us to the question, how do we actually apply these arguments in relation to others? How do we deploy this? You see, philosophical understanding of the truth is only one part, maybe 1/3 of what we need in order to actually change someone's heart. It's just one part of it. It's only one aspect of the package. If we want to know how we can apply this Mayavad refutation we've been talking about in the lives of others, when we see it in the world around us, we'll talk about in our own hearts in a minute, but when we see it around in the world, then we should look at the example of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. In both of his dialogues, famous dialogues with impersonalists, one with Prakashananda Saraswati and his disciples in Benares, and one with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya in Puri. In both cases, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used at least 3 very important tools. One was no doubt his great philosophical acumen, his intellect, his knowledge. In fact, it says in Chaitanya Charitamrita that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya presented 100 arguments against what Mahaprabhu said. It's not that he asked him, what do you think? And then Mahaprabhu spoke up and he said, wow, that's amazing, I accept. No, he was an intelligent man. And intelligence means you always question, you argue. There's discussion, just like Arjuna does with Krishna. I don't quite understand what you're saying. He says 100 arguments he gave, and Mahaprabhu replied to each one of them. So that was there, no doubt. His great philosophical understanding, as we read at the beginning of the seminar, and what prompted the seminar, as Prabhupada saying, that as devotees to be Madhyama Adhikaris, we should understand what is Vedanta, at least the basics, if not all the detailed arguments and all of that. At least the basic understanding we should have. But that was not all. What else did Mahaprabhu use in the case of both Prakashananda Saraswati and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya? First, his humility. First, his humility. In the case of Prakashananda Saraswati, it was by seating himself in the shoe area, saying, I'm not worthy to sit amongst all of you luminaries. And they felt so moved by his humility, they invited him to come in and immediately gave him the platform to speak by asking him questions. In Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's case, the Lord expressed his humility in a different way, but equally powerful. By listening to Sarvabhauma for 7 days. And he comes to him and he says, I am a new sannyasi. I am so young and inexperienced. Please train me up in proper Vedanta. You are my protector. You like my father. Please help me. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that these words were like nectar to Sarvabhauma's ears. The Lord's speech was so sweet, and it just brought out his affection. So this is an important principle, and so many of you here are book distributors and you go out regularly, you understand this point, right? That a person gives themselves to us when they see that we are worthy of it, right? That when there's a relationship with us, when they see something, they see someone they like. It's not even first about the message, it's about the person who carries the message. And if we leave that person with at least a favorable feeling towards devotees, that these are real gentlemen and gentle ladies, then we've done at least 1/3 of our task. Then the other parts of the philosophical changes can come later. But at least that's the start. That's the introduction. And it's the most important part of it, frankly. Because so long as there's attachment to a devotee, there is possibility of sukriti, there's possibility of the heart opening, and one becomes... The reason Sarvabhauma's heart was open to listen to Mahaprabhu was why? Because of Mahaprabhu's humility, because of his cultivation of a relationship, because Mahaprabhu told him, you're like my father, and you should teach me. And so he was open, he was vulnerable, he was ready to listen. It's about the person. That's where it starts. So the humility, the philosophical acumen, and then Mahaprabhu in each case displayed his beauty, his effulgence. Now, we don't have that much effulgence. Devotees have some effulgence. It's a fact. I mean, isn't it the case? Have you heard people talk about how people will, you guys just glow. There's something about you. You're so happy all the time. So there's some effulgence there, but at least from our purity of heart. This is how I take it. That there's some purity of heart that is the source of this quote-unquote effulgence. It may not be in the form of golden light that's bathing everyone, but in the sense of people are attracted by something that they don't quite know what it is. But it's a purity of life and of practice, that what we are speaking matches with who we are. The achar and the prachar match. And that combination of purity of practice, of humility of heart, and of acumen of intellect, that's irresistible. No power in the world can resist that triple combination. Purity of heart, acumen of intellect, and the humility of the heart, the purity of our practice, and the acumen of our intellect. No one can resist that because it's too much. It covers all the bases, right? It's wonderful. It's what we're all seeking, actually. So, how do we deploy this? Well, we have to see, okay, this person's journey through impersonalism may actually be a stepping stone towards their journey towards Krishna. Perhaps they learn self-control through the path of impersonalism. Perhaps they learn how not to harm other living entities, how to be vegetarian. Perhaps they learn austerity. Perhaps they learn simplicity. Perhaps they learn how to have a curious and intellectual mind. From what I can tell, there's two different types of people we tend to meet. Those who are impersonalists by default, and those who are impersonalists by intention, right? Who are actively Mayavadis, and those who are kind of default Mayavadis. Remember we talked about at the beginning of this seminar that Mayavadi is kind of the default position in the material world. If you don't try to be anything else, you'll end up a Mayavadi. Because that's why we're here in the material world, right? And so you can't blame the living entity in this world for being an impersonalist. No one deserves to be in the material world. We all deserve to be back home, back to Godhead. And we are in the same spot they are. We're all here. We're all here for the same reason. So that sort of default impersonalism is something that by these three things, we can find a change of heart. Okay, if there's an active, intentional attack on the Lord or his form or so on and so forth, then we should be ready to respond. There's no reason why we cannot. The Acharyas, Srila Prabhupada, they've given us all the tools we need to understand it and to respond in a polite and gentlemanly way, but nevertheless in a clear and strong way. We find it's active Maya. But that's, in my estimation, a very small percentage of this world's population. Actually, a very tiny percentage who are determined, intentional Mayavadis. The vast majority of people don't even know that they are impersonalists. In fact, half the time we don't even know we're impersonalists. And that brings me to the semifinal, the penultimate point I want to make here, which is, what about us? What about the impersonalism in us? Our acharyas actually give us a choice. They say the Lord has this impersonal feature. He has this personal feature. And really, Bheda philosophy, one could conceivably say, I love the Abheda part. I love the oneness side of things. The real question that our acharyas raise before us is, what kind of world do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a world that is without form, without relationship, without any space for the expression of emotion, ultimately? A world that is free of variety, free of growth and change. A world that does not evolve for the better? Or do you want to see a world, an ultimate reality, that is full of variety, that is full of expression of emotion and intellect? A world that is rich in form and relationship, and always dynamic and always growing. A world where there is room within perfection. Remember when I said earlier in the seminar that Shankaracharya says, if something is perfect, it has to be unchanging. Because it'll either become more perfect, in which case it wasn't perfect, or it'll become less perfect, in which case that's terrible too, right? So perfection is this static place. It's this frozen location. In fact, this is the idea of kaivalya. In Jainism also, the idea of liberation is a state of liberation that where we stand still. We stand still forever. Or do we want a world where there is space in perfection? Our Vaishnava acharyas say, within the realm of what is perfection, there's room for dynamism. There's room for growth and for change and for variety and for activity. Why not? What prevents a perfect entity from becoming more perfect, from expressing themselves in perfect ways? Why not? Do we want to live in that kind of world where our wonder and our confusion is directed at the most wondrous of all beings, namely the Lord Himself? Where there are limitless relationships. So this is what our acharyas are doing. They're providing us with a choice we have to make. What kind of world do we want to see? Do we want to live in? Do we want to exist in? One of my favorite places where Prabhupada argues against Mayavad is actually one of the briefest places where he does. He just gives one sentence against Mayavad in this purport that otherwise doesn't have a lot to do with impersonalism. This is in the chapter in Bhagavatam on the passing away of Bhishma Dev in the first canto. Bhishma Dev's lying there on the bed of arrows, and he's remembering the Lord. And perhaps you've read this chapter before. As he's seeing Krishna before him, Krishna and all the sages come for his final moments as he's on the bed of arrows. And he's remembering, he's seeing this vision of Krishna, his favorite vision of Krishna. What is that vision? Krishna's on the battlefield. He's got the reins of the reins in his left hand and the bridle whip for the horses in his right hand. So no flute here, right? The reins in the left, the bridle whip in the right. He's decorated with beads of sweat and drops of blood that come from the arrows administered by Bhishma himself. Can you imagine? Bhishma is remembering the pain he gave to the Lord and feeling so much joy. This is the relationship between the Lord and his devotee. It's a dynamic relationship. It's not even just about worship. He's thinking, that was a good fight. And I got in a couple of punches. And he's remembering that scene. And the Lord is covered by dust from the hooves of the horses, kicked up by the hooves of the horses. And then he gets really worried about Arjuna's safety because Bhishma's fighting so valiantly. So he jumps off the chariot and he runs towards the Lord. And Prabhupada describes as he runs towards Bhishma, on the way dropping his upper garment. Now, all these details that Bhishma is remembering, the Lord dropped his upper garment on the way, he had this in his left hand. This only happens in our life when there is something that we cannot forget, that's seared, that's one of those moments in our life. Perhaps you have these moments, right? Where some scene from your life that you can remember every little detail of. Hopefully it's a happy one. And you can remember everything, you know, what the smells were like, what the sights were like, who was saying what, the expression on people's face. It's seared into your mind. At the moment of death, he's remembering a scene like this. He can remember every detail of it. It's not a general remembrance of the Lord. It's a detailed remembrance. Everything. And Prabhupada describes in the purport that Krishna runs towards Bhishma as a lover runs towards a lover. Wow. How amazing is that? He's coming to kill Bhishma after Bhishma has caused blood to flow. And this is as a lover comes to a lover. And one more thing Srila Prabhupada reveals to us in the purport. He says, when Bhishma is standing there, when Krishna is sitting there on the chariot, the view that Bhishma is seeing of Krishna, behind him is Partha, Arjuna, and the rope and the whip and those beautiful horses, that is a view, that vision is visible only to Bhishma Dev, not to Arjuna. Prabhupada says it's not available to Arjuna. Why? He's behind. He's behind the whole scene. And really why? Because that's not his rasa with the Lord. He's Krishna's friend. But this virya rasa, this chivalrous mood, that's Bhishma's mood. And so Krishna, what Prabhupada is telling us is that Krishna is interacting personally and individually with everyone on that battlefield. Every single person in this huge battlefield with however many hundreds of millions of warriors there are. And Bhishma is having a private moment with Krishna. He's exchanging something no one else is noticing, no one else has in that relationship. That's what Ramanujacharya means when he says Krishna has every relationship on the planet is his. Right? There can be 1 million people in this room, and Krishna is exchanging a personal relationship with each one of us that is visible in its uniqueness only to us. And then to the point. At the end of that purport, after describing this beautiful scene and talking about how Bhishma has this unique moment with Krishna, and Krishna is running to him as a lover runs towards a lover, Prabhupada says, and this vision is unavailable to the Mayavadi. That's it. He says, this is what is not available to them. Something along those lines, he says. One sentence. And he even gives in. You have this there, Shivasprabhu? So he says, oops, sorry, yeah. So first canto, chapter 9. Is it 38? Yeah. Okay. Yes. So he says, the Lord is undoubtedly at the bottom of the purport. The Lord is undoubtedly, we can start a little bit before. All the way to the bottom of the purport, please. Yeah. Yes. Just 2 sentences above what you have. The Lord was so angry that Arjuna checked him when he was moving towards Bhishma Dev. But in spite of Arjuna's checking, he proceeded toward Bhishma Dev as a lover goes to a lover without caring for hindrances. Apparently his determination was to kill Bhishma Dev, but factually it was to please him as a great devotee of the Lord. As an aside, this has a wonderful message for how, as devotees, we can experience troubles and difficulties in our life. The pain that comes to a Vaishnava, someone who's truly connected in their relationship to Krishna, is still pain. It's still suffering, or it seems so, but it's come from a different source, right? It's a lover running towards a lover, which is a very different experience than an enemy running towards an enemy. Even though the scene looks very similar to a normal battle scene, right? Everyone else watching it would say, oh, there goes another warrior to kill another warrior. But something else was happening. The Lord is undoubtedly the deliverer of all conditioned souls. The impersonalists desire salvation from him, and he always awards them according to their aspiration. But here Bhishma Dev aspires to see the Lord in his personal feature. All pure devotees aspire for this. Just that one sentence at the end, Prabhupada is saying so much there. He's saying, look, this is what you're going to miss out. Right? If you're a Mayavadi, you're going to lose this. You'll never know your Brahman in this way. And this is what really our heart longs for. This is what actually Yayatma Suprasidati is going to actually make us happy. And in fact, it does, right? Over time, starting about the 15th century, around the time of Mahaprabhu, just historically speaking, the tidal wave of bhakti is so powerful and so strong all throughout India that all the major camps of impersonalism, the mattas of the different Shankaracharyas, are tending towards devotion. They're all writing in this way. So people like Madhusudana Saraswati, who's one of the great Advaitins, one of the greatest of all times, he's writing in these affectionate ways for Krishna. And all the Advaitins start to write commentaries on Bhagavatam. And no one can resist. Everyone's trying to find a place for bhakti in their impersonalism somewhere. Because it's a tidal wave. It's something that captures people's hearts. In fact, this Madhusudana Saraswati, he wrote a book called the Advaita Siddhi, which is a very, very heavy book on Mayavad philosophy. But in that book, actually in another book that he wrote, he writes this verse, and I want to read it for you just to give you a flavor of how irresistible Krishna is. Even as you're trying to be a hardcore impersonalist, it's just, you can't miss out on what's going on here. You can't miss out on this. Madhusudana Saraswati says in his Bhagavad Gita commentary, this verse, I'll just read it for you here. He says, Dhyana bhyasana vashikritena manasa tannirgunam nishkriyam. Dhyana bhyasana vashikritena manasa tannirgunam nishkriyam. Jyoti kinchana yogino yadi param pashyanti pashyantu te. Jyoti kinchana yogino yadi param pashyanti pashyantu te. Asmakam tu tadeva lochana chamatkaraya bhuyachiram. Asmakam tu tadeva lochana chamatkaraya bhuyacharam. Kalindi pulinodare kimapiyan nilam maho dhavati. Kalindi pulinodare kimapiyan nilam maho dhavati. Here's the translation. Listen carefully. If the yogis, with their minds controlled by the practice of meditation, want to see that indescribable light, attributeless, actionless, and supreme, let them see it. But as for me, that wondrous blue effulgence which runs about and plays on the banks of the Yamuna, let that blue effulgence be the joy of my eyes. He can't quite get himself to say Krishna. He's still kind of a blue effulgence, but there's something blue running around on the banks of the Kalindi, and he's really attractive. And you can see the white light. I'd prefer to see the blue light here. You can see the irresistibleness of Krishna there, right? He's doing this contrast. In fact, he goes so far as to say, Krishnat param kimapi tattvam na jane. I don't know any truth superior than Krishna. Even Shankaracharya, he comes to that point, right? He says, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam. So this is a choice that our acharyas are giving us. That's what it ultimately comes down to. Otherwise, this argumentation back and forth can and does go on forever. Forever. We can argue and argue. And those arguments have value. There's no doubt about it. They are important because bhakti has to be on that foundation. But they're not sufficient. That's the foundation, not the building. And the foundation is not enough to hold for the building. We can't live in a foundation. The arguments, the philosophy is the foundation, as Srila Prabhupada said in that purport. But we need more than that. We need more than that. And that's the choice that our acharyas are giving us in terms of what kind of world and what kind of reality we want to live in. So, last question is, how do we make that choice? How do we make that choice? How do we rid ourselves of impersonalism? The answer overall is just very simple. Through the practice of bhakti, in the way that we know it, in the way that we practice it, that is what purifies the heart and reawakens our personal relationship with Krishna. But then there's a few other things, more specific things, and these are just some random thoughts that I had. It's not a comprehensive thing, but a few things that emerged as I was trying to think of, well, what are those specific steps that we might take from what we understand in terms of the prescriptions given to us by our scriptures? The first one, I'm going to go from the most, there's only 4 points here, but I'm going to go from the most general to the most specific in relation to bhakti. Okay? Most generally speaking, we end where we started to point the finger, which is to say that we should minimize our relationships and activity on social media and on screens in general. This is a place where impersonalism flourishes. Psychologists talk about this particular phenomena, which is specifically, I forget its name, but it's this phenomena that happens where people, once they're behind a screen, feel comfortable saying things they would never say to someone's face. Why? Because that's an impersonal format. Studies have shown again and again that the more someone is involved in social media, the more lonely they become. We call it social media for what reason? It's antisocial media. It makes a person very antisocial. 33% of millennials say that they have no close friends, when in fact their friends list is probably miles long. Right? But the screen becomes a vehicle for impersonalism. In fact, one of the important metaphors of impersonalism that we didn't have time to talk about was bimba pratibimba. Jiva Goswami talks about this, of a thing and its reflection. The reflection is the stomping grounds of impersonalism, because a reflection has all the color and all the shapes, but no substance, no person. And so, what is the screen but a reflection? It's a reflection of reality before us, and it drives us towards impersonal sorts of relationships. So they're unavoidable. We can't avoid them, but we have to be very careful around them, particularly as tools for entertainment and as tools for relationship. As tools for work, as tools for, research or whatever, fine. Okay, we use it within limits, but most people don't go to the internet for research or for work. We like to think we do, and sometimes we do. But most of the time, when we're logging in, it's for 2 reasons: entertainment or relationship. And those are the exact 2 areas where the screen fosters impersonalism. It separates us from the persons behind the screen. You've seen this before, right? 2 people walking down the street, and they're supposedly spending the evening together, and then one person's phone rings, and they answer or talk or they're texting, and then the other person feels really awkward. What am I doing? So they pick out their phone, and they start texting or calling someone. And now 2 people right next to each other, and yet they might as well not be there. The person is ignored in favor of the screen in front of them. So this is a well-known problem. I don't need to talk about it at length, but it's something to think about. It's the growing spread of impersonalism in our world, in my personal opinion. And then the second thing is, in our policies, in our services, in our decision making, we always ask the question, where is the person in all of this? Who am I dealing with here? The answer to that question may be other devotees, it may be Krishna, it may be ourselves as a person. But we always ask, in whatever we do, any activity, any project, at work, at home, in the temple, where's the person? Who's being affected in all of this? My spiritual master, Hanumat Preshaka Swami, he often says that in any kind of project or endeavor, particularly, say, an educational enterprise, we first ask, who am I? What's my relationship to this project I'm planning to do, this service? Why am I doing this? What are my reasons for going into this? Are they the right reasons? And then after we ask, who am I? We ask, who are we? What's the Sangha in which I'm doing it? Who are the people I'm engaged with? Do I have the right team? Am I respecting them properly? Do I have others whom I can work with? Or do we all share a sense of mission? Who am I? Who are we? And only then can we ask, what is the plan? What is the process? Plan and process come after person. Otherwise, you get what we talked about at the beginning of this seminar. You get systems and resources in place of persons. And we love systems and we love resource management. But that's not who we are about as Vaishnavas. We're about the person. So first we ask, who am I? Who are we? Then what is the plan? What is the system? And then we ask, what resources do I need to accomplish the plan? Too often in our work, we start the other direction. We say, what resources do I need? Let's get a building up fast. Or let's get this. Or if I only had $1 million, what would we do with the $1 million? Oh, this is what I would do. Who would you do it with? Well, I don't know. I don't really like anyone around me. It's the opposite, right? That's impersonalism. We start with a system, and the person is the add-on at the end of the whole process. We start with the person, then head out from there. The third, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur makes this very clear in his Sharanagati as we get closer to bhakti here. Pretty much the most important thing, he says, is we stay in the association of other devotees, of personalists, of Vaishnavas. It's our greatest vaccination. It's our greatest protection, our shield against impersonalism, against Mayavad philosophy, is that whenever we embark on any kind of endeavor, whether that be physical or intellectual, and I say intellectual because this is something that affects me a lot. It matters to me. That it's not just about where we're going somewhere and we're going to go together in the association of devotees. But you can be in the association of devotees, but off on our own intellectual journey. And intellectual journeys of exploration are great. There's nothing wrong with them. But we have to do those journeys in the association of other Vaishnav explorers. When we do it that way, when we embark on our studies, on our searches, on our whatever it is, in the association of other devotees, then we stay protected, we stay strong, our intelligence stays fixed at Krishna's lotus feet. So, in the association of devotees, not just in our physical activities, but also intellectually and emotionally, our journeys, we find a partner in study. We find a partner. We want to learn Sanskrit. Who are we going to learn it with? Otherwise, it's a treacherous landscape. We want to study this work of the Acharya. Who are we studying it with? Who are we studying it under? Who's the author? Who's the translator? Who's the publisher? Who's my study partner? That's what association means. And if we've got the right association, we can practically venture anywhere. A devotee is fearless. Vibhishan lived in Lanka. Hanuman entered Lanka. It's just a matter of association. We can go anywhere, right, if the association is right. Okay. Fourth and final point. Impersonalism is all about focusing on the generalities, the universals, the uniformities of this world. We're all one. We're all together. We're all the same. Bhakti is about focusing on the particularities, on the specificities, on the uniquenesses. Think about when an impersonalist praises the Supreme. What does he or she say? Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma from the Upanishads. Brahman is truth. Brahman is knowledge. Brahman is infinity. Yes? When a devotee praises the Supreme, what does he say? Krishna has a flower, Kadamba flower, on his left ear. And on his right hand, he's got the flute. And there's shark-shaped earrings swinging to and fro. Do you see the contrast here? If you see how we worship our Lord, it's with the greatest specificity. It's with the greatest uniqueness. Look at the way Bhishma Dev in this story was praising Krishna. He remembered which hand Krishna held the rope in and which hand he held the whip in. Right? I forget, but he didn't forget. He remembered exactly which direction it was, and he remembered when and where Krishna dropped his upper cloth and what color the cloth was, and where the spots of blood were and the spots of sweat. Bhakti is about noticing, valuing, treasuring, praising the uniqueness, the specificity in the Lord and also in his devotees. So, by cultivating that vision of focus on specificity, we can help prevent ourselves from slipping into the generalities that are a stepping stone towards impersonalism. There are many ways of doing this, but one of the finest is through the worship of the deity. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that in those religions and those communities where deity worship does not occur, impersonalism and atheism will definitely arise. Why? Because the deity, he is the place where we can focus on Krishna in all his specificity. When we have darshan of him, we can look and see what color of earring is he wearing today? How is the decorations on his face done? What is the angle of his skirt? What type of skirt is Srimati Radharani wearing? Is it a billowing skirt or is it a pencil skirt? What are they looking like today? How is their smile today? This is actually one of the clearest markers of a person's journey towards becoming a devotee. I've seen this so many times. When people first come to the temple, they come for darshan. But what does darshan mean? I've had people come to the temple and after a year come to me and say, "You changed Krishna's dress." And it sounds funny, but it's really, it's darshan in an impersonal sense, right? And as we advance, we start to notice those same people go, "Oh, Krishna changes his dress every week. And can I sponsor the dress for Janmashtami?" And then eventually they start noticing Krishna's jewelry. And then all of a sudden they want to do service for the Lord. And one day they come excited and say, "I did my service and it seems Krishna's happy. He's smiling today. Did you see that?" And all of a sudden, the specificities of Krishna's form, they start to manifest. Those who worship Shalagram will tell you that initially, okay, he's Shalagram, but as the worship continues, they see more and more detail, more and more features, more and more personality manifest. Tan nama rupa charitadi sukirtananu, right? Nama, rupa, charita, all these things go hand in hand. We become more and more detailed, more and more specific. So deity worship is an antidote to impersonalism. It's a wonderful way for us to see the specificities of the Lord and appreciate them with our hearts. And together with that come the scriptures, the Srimad Bhagavatam, that we relish the prayers of the devotees and the very specific ways in which they describe Krishna's form and Krishna's beauty and his attributes. So, this brings us to the final treat that I had, which is really an expression of this feeling of devotion towards the Lord in all his specificity. In fact, so the prayers I want to recite with you are selections of prayers from Srila Rupa Goswami's Padyavali. This is a book that he's written. Actually, it's a compilation. Padya means verses, and Avali means string or row. He's brought together the finest verses he had. He says, Rasikair Virachitair. These are written by the Rasikas. And the ones I specifically selected are the ones that have to do with Vedanta philosophy, Vedanta and the Upanishads. Many of them are by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, the very person whose journey has become something of a theme in this seminar. And we can see his mood in relation to the Lord. So one of the things that you'll find in these verses is that Rupa Goswami's mood at this point, you see, Srila Jiva Goswami works very hard to try to create a bridge to impersonalism, to take what is useful. Rupa Goswami here, he's kind of had enough of the impersonal talk and of the Upanishads. There's one verse here which begins, how long will we sift the husk of the Upanishads? We're beating this husk and there's no rasa coming out. And he says, you Mayavadis, you impersonalists, you can have your Upanishads, you can have your Brahman, you can have your Tattvamasi, I'll take my Krishna. This is his mood, you'll see again and again in these verses. This is actually Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's mood at the end of his conversion process. Mahaprabhu asks him to recite a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. And he recites this famous verse, Tatte nukampam susamikshyamanam. And what does he do? He changes the last line from Mukti Pade Sadaya Bhak, one who worships the Lord like this during the course of his lifetime becomes deserving of liberation, Daya Bhak. And he changes Mukti Pade to Bhakti Pade. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tries his level best to convince Sarvabhauma that Mukti Pade is okay, because Mukti Pada is the name of the Lord, He who is the abode of liberation. So for the devotee, liberation as understood as the Lord, understood as bhakti, can become, a devotee can receive it. And he's saying, you don't need to change because I can understand it properly. And Sarvabhauma, what does he say? He accepts this. He says, yes, you're right. We can read this verse in the proper way. But he says, I can't. You know why? Because the word mukti has left such a bad taste in my mouth. Why? Because these impersonalists, one of whom I used to be, have messed up the word. They've messed it up. They've created a bad taste. So it's like a bad memory. You can't, the word is not good anymore. I'm going to get rid of it. Right? In fact, at one point, everyone is there in the, what is it called? Bindu Sarovar. And they're, is it called Bindu Sarovar? The lake they're all swimming in? I forget. Huh? I think it's, anyway. So everyone's swimming in this wonderful lake to cool off. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Gopinath Acharya are on the banks of the lake watching the scene. And all the devotees are in there having a lot of fun. And even Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who must by this point be in his 60s or 70s, he's the court pundit of Maharaj Prataparudra, one of the most well-known scholars in all of India. And what's he doing? He's in the water with Advaita Acharya, having a splash fight, throwing water at him, laughing and giggling like a child. And Mahaprabhu, he's watching this, and he turns to Gopinath Acharya, and he says, what's happened to the Pandit? Why is he behaving in a totally non-grave way? Pandits are supposed to be grave. What happened to him? And Gopinath Acharya, he says, Shushka tarka khali khaite janma gela jar tava kathamrita piyao ei kripa tumar. Shushka tarka khali khaite janma gela jar tava kathamrita piyao Ei kripa tumar. That man who spent his entire life eating the dry cakes of logic. The dry husk. You know those puffed rice cake things? Someone who's spent their whole life eating that, and now you have given him the nectar of Krishna Katha to drink. What do you expect? This is how he's going to behave. So this is the mood in which Rupa Goswami is writing these verses. And I hope and I pray that whatever vestiges of Mayavad might still be present in the room, or whatever pain I may have unfortunately caused your heart by speaking of Krishna in the words of Shankaracharya, that this will clear that up and give some joy again. So, there are a couple of verses that I will recite on my own because the meter is a little complex, and then others that we can all recite together. So we begin first with one from Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And can we get the verse and the translation on the same screen, please? Yeah, there we go. So the first two I'll recite on my own, okay? So please follow, just read along, and then we'll do it together. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya says in the Padyavali, as he's quoted there. Oh, the translations are by Rembert Lutyaheims or Gopinath Acharya Das. He's one of my dear friends. He's someone who did his PhD with me in Oxford University, a wonderful devotee, and one of the finest Sanskritists I know. He's really, really good. So anyway, he's done these translations. Navayam kavayo natarkika, Navayam kavayo natarkika, Nacha Vedanta Nitanta Paraga, Nacha Vedanta Nitanta Paraga, Nacha Vadi Nivaraka Param, Kapata Bhira Kishora Kinkara. We are no poets, no logicians. We have not crossed the vast ocean of Vedanta. And we definitely do not win debates. We are servants of a cheating cowherd boy. Kapata bhira kishora kinkara. Servants of a youth kishora who is kapata, who is very cunning. And this is, of course, all the more ironic coming from that one person who has definitely crossed the ocean of Vedanta, who definitely won pretty much every debate except for the last one he engaged in. So, another from Yadavendra Puri, also a sannyasi and therefore no doubt learned in Vedanta. He says, Rasam prashansantu kavita nishtha Brahmamritam Veda Shiro Nivishta Vayam Tugunja Kalitavatamsam Grihitavamsham Kamapi Shrayamaha. Skilled poets may praise rasa, those wrapped in the Upanishads, the immortal bliss of Brahman. But we seek refuge in someone who wears earrings of gunja berries, who holds a flute. So beautiful, no? He's contrasting the bliss of Brahman and the study of the Upanishads with worshipping someone who wears gunja berries and plays a flute. Next one, we can recite, we can do it repetitively. There's not that many verses. Shrutam apyo panishadam Dure harikatamritat Yanna santi dravachitta Kampashru pulakadayaha. Upanishadic discourse is nothing like the nectar of narrations about Hari. It does not melt the mind, or make you shiver, or lead to tears, or bristled hair. This is by Bhagavad Vyasa, Padyavali 39. Okay, so far the theme is all about the Upanishads, how the Upanishads end up being very tasteless for devotees who experience Krishna Bhakti. Nanda Nandana Kaishora Leelamrita Mahabudho Nimagnanam Kimasmakam Nirvana Lavanam Bhasa. We drown in an ambrosial sea of Nandanandana's youthful play. What are the salty waters of liberation to us? Bhavantu tatra janmani yatra te murali kala karnapeyatvam ayati kim me nirvanam vartaya. May I ever be born there where my ears can drink the soft, mellifluous call of your flute. Why talk to me of extinguishing my existence? This is Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya again. All his verses, all Sarvabhauma's verses in Padyavali have this theme of contrasting with his prior life and experience. Bhakti Seva Bhagavato Muktistat Padalanghanam Ko Mudho Dasatam Prapya Prabhavam Padamichhati. Devotion is service to the Lord. Liberation is going beyond his feet. What fool, having obtained servitude, desires a position of majesty? This is done purposely with irony, right? Because the reality is that in this world, everyone desires majesty. And what fool would want to be a servant? But in this, he's reversing the picture. When we have servitude to the Lord, what fool would want to be king? This is about, the next two are about Brahman, the impersonal Brahman, by Raghupati Upadhyaya, another great scholar. Kam prati kathayitum ishe sampratiko va pratitamayatu gopati tanaya kunje gopa vadhuti vitam brahma. Whom can I tell? Who will believe me now? The pleasure seeker with the young cowherd girl in the bushes on the sun's daughter's banks, on the Yamuna's banks, is Brahman. He's saying, who's going to believe me if I tell them that boy there running around with the gopis on the banks of the Yamuna, that's the Brahman you've been studying and reading about in the Upanishads this whole time. Shrutaya palala kalpaha Kimiha vayam sampratam chinumaha Ahriyate puraiva nayanair Abhiribhi param brahma. And here comes the line I was telling you about. Why do we here still sift the husk-like Upanishads? Earlier, the cowherd girls caught the supreme Brahman with just a glance. Okay, just a couple more here. Well, little more actually. There's 3, 4. This one is a longer, slightly more difficult meter, for which we don't have a regular melody. Dhyana-titam kimapi paramam ye tu janati tattvam. Tesham astam hridaya kuhare shuddha chinmatra atma. Asmakam tu prakriti madhura smera vaktrara vindo. Megha shyama kanaka paridhi pankajaksho yamatma. in the hollow of the hearts of those who discern some ultimate truth beyond meditation, may the self abide, nothing but mere consciousness. While in our heart, may this charming self remain with lotus eyes and smiling lotus face, dark as a cloud, clothed in gold. So he's saying, in those hearts, and he's calling them the hollow of the hearts, right? Largely empty hearts. Those who discern some ultimate truth, that's just consciousness. Let that Atma stay there. But in my heart, I want a different Atma. That's Krishna. Sada sarvatraste nanu vimalam adyam tava padam. Tathapyekam stokam nahi bhavataro patram abhinat. Kshanam jihvagrastham tavatu bhagavan nama nikhilam. Samulam samsaram kashati katarat sevyamanayo. This is by Sridhar Swami, the great commentator on Srimad Bhagavatam. He says, it is true, your primordial effulgence, he's speaking to Krishna, it is true, your primordial effulgence exists undefiled in all places and in all times. Yet it has not torn even a single small leaf from the tree of material life. But your blessed name, for a mere moment standing on the tip of my tongue, obliterates the endless stream of rebirth. Which of these two shall I serve? Powerful, huh? All that impersonal Brahmajyoti can't liberate even a little leaf from this material existence. And your holy name barely touches my tongue, and it ends the whole cycle of rebirth altogether. Who should I take shelter of? Okay. Dhanyanam. This is Shardula Vikriditam, like Shad Goswami Ashtaka. Dhanyanam hridi bhashatam girivara pratyagra kunjo kasham. Satyanandarasam vikara vibhava vyavrittamantar maha. Asmakam kila vallaviratiraso vrindatavi lalaso. Gopa kopi mahendra nila ruchirash chitte muhu kridatu. Gopa kopi mahendra nila ruchirash chitte muhu kridatu. This is by Ishwara Puri, the spiritual master of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. May an inner light, the very essence of bliss, freed from the power of change, we talked about that, glow in the hearts of the fortunate who have made the blooming groves of the best of hills their home. So he's talking about this ashram in the woods. May that inner light, the essence of bliss, freed from all change, glow in their hearts. But in our hearts, may a herder of cows continually play, longing for the gardens of Vrinda, relishing the cowherd girl's love, lustrous like sapphire. And there's exactly two more. The next one is, the next two, really, really sweet. This next one is anonymous. Rupa Goswami says, Kasyachit, by some great poet, but we don't know who. And it's a conversation, this poem. Ka tvam muktirupagatasmi bhavati kasmada kasmadeha. Shri Krishna smaranena deva bhavato dasi padam prapita. Dure tishtha managanagasi katham kuryadanaryam mai. Twadgandha nijanama chandanarasa lepasya lopo bhavet. Translation. Who are you? It's a conversation, okay? Who are you? I am liberation and am at your service. This is the devotee she's speaking to. Why have you come here unannounced? Your remembrance of Sri Krishna, sir, has made me your servant. Begone, I am nearly sinless. Why would you dishonor me? The answer? Your smell could overwhelm the sandal perfume from the name of the Lord. So this is what Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is feeling when he changes Mukti Pade to Bhakti Pade. He says, it's just the smell of that Mayavad, it's just, I can't stand it. It's too strong. And the last one is my favorite, and really I think sums up this seminar. This is by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So here it goes. Gnatam karna bhujam matam parichitaye van vikshiki shikshita. Mimamsa viditaiva sankhya sharanir yoge vitirnamati. Vedanta parishilita sarabhasam kintu sphuran madhuri. Dhara kachana nanda sunu murali macchittamakarshati. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya says, I know Kannada's views. I am very familiar with logic. I studied Mimamsa. I understood the path of Sankhya. I have fully fathomed yoga. I zealously applied myself to Vedanta. Nevertheless, there is a rushing flow of special sweetness, the flute of Nanda's son, that pulls my heart. And I think that says it all. This is essentially the conclusion that the Vaishnavas reach. I've been through this, I've been through that, and it was a good journey. I learned a lot through that process. I learned what is the truth, what is not the truth. But when everything, all the dust settles from that journey, what's left over is the sound of Krishna's flute. And when that flute calls, then all my Vedanta and Yoga and Mimamsa, they all fall away. So with that thought, I'm afraid I have to leave you. We don't have time for questions, unfortunately. I have a flight to catch at 4, and so I have to stop here. Thank you all so much. I hope that this seminar, despite its technicality and despite whatever I had to speak about Mayavad philosophy, will in some way be useful to you in terms of solidifying your own conviction in the path of bhakti. And I pray that Srila Prabhupada will accept this as a humble offering in the service of his own mission, Paschatya Desha Tarine, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Thank you again so much for giving me this opportunity again this year. I've benefited so much from your association, and Krishna willing, we hope to see you again. Hare Krishna.
Radhika Raman Prabhu, yet another masterpiece that we have stored on YouTube for those who want to watch it again and again, dissect it, imbibe the great compartments of wisdom that he's given throughout, and ultimately come to the conclusion of this last verse. We feel that just by your presence here, we're ever drawn towards the real siddhanta of Krishna consciousness as well as its sweetness at the same time. And we're very much indebted to you, to your parents, to your whole community, and to Krishna for sending you to us and keeping you in our orbit. We make a prayer that you may always be safe and healthy, live long, so that you may continue to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, beginning here at ISV. Everyone who agrees with these ideas in part or in whole, please say Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna! One more time, Radhika Raman Prabhu. We'd go another half hour, but we know you have a flight to catch. Thank you very much.
Thank you again. Oh, good.
Hare Krishna. There is a prasadam outside for everyone. Especially kids can get in the line first because they start school at 2:30. So kids, you can have first prasadam and then everyone else can go out in the parking lot to grab prasadam.